Good afternoon. I am the Reverend Gowan Pamphlet, pastor and founder of the only Baptist church here in Williamsburg, the First Baptist Church. I have the pleasure to pastor now almost 600 members. We are here in Williamsburg and, well, not too far outside of the city of Williamsburg on a road to Jamestown in a place called Raccoon's Chase, right upon the mouth of College Creek, which runs right under the road to Jamestown. And my congregation now, of course, is a congregation mostly of enslaved people. I would say maybe more than half of my congregation are enslaved, but I also have free blacks that are part of my congregation. Also have some whites that are part of my congregation, some Scottish, some Irish, part of my congregation also. I am here and very excited about this time of year they call Christmastide. Christmastide is one of my favorite. I get excited. I mean, even as a child growing up here in Williamsburg, you get excited about a lot of things, but Christmastide is one of my great times of season, and especially the day after Christmas, which is the 25th of December. The 26th day of December is called Boxing Day, and I am just thrilled to be able to talk about this occasion. It's a very old tradition. Boxing Day goes all the way back to the Great Britain and England and Scotland and Ireland around 1500, 1600, 1700. This 26th of December is celebrated mainly from the standpoint of those that are getting these boxes or gift boxes. They are mainly the poor on that particular day. Given a box might contain money of some sort that had been collected in churches throughout all England, Scotland, and Ireland. The poor will receive some of these boxes. Also, the widows that might have lost their husbands in sometime that season or before, they are always taken care of by the church, and therefore they will be getting boxes on that day also. And of course, the orphans. Orphans were always, we still have orphans, and still it is the responsibility of the churches to take care of the widows and the orphans and the poor. And of course, they would be receiving boxes of some sort also. And so it is a great time of celebration. As you probably well know, I have been a slave in this society. I was born, raised mainly on the streets of on the Duke of Gloucester in the King's Arms Tavern, where I spent most of my life. Mrs. Vobe, my owner, and many of the other enslaved people there at the King's Arms, and of course throughout all of Williamsburg, you would have by the 1775 census, out of the population of 1,800, it would have at least 953 that were enslaved here in Williamsburg. And of course, that would be quite a number of gifts, boxes, I would say, that they would be receiving the day after Christmas, Boxing Day. Always looking forward to that time of year when people are greatly anticipating something they might have thought they might have wanted or dreamed about, or maybe something they even maybe have talked about during that year might be found in one of those boxes. Enslaved people now are being given these types of gifts, boxes. Also, you remember those that have been very loyal in delivering goods to you. Those people will be given boxes also, those that will bring you the mail. You want to give that person a box also on that day. And so it's a very time, a year where you're sharing a lot of your heart and showing your appreciation to those that have served you and continue to serve you. Indentured servants, don't want to leave them out. They also receive boxes of some sort or with some type of gift on Boxing Day, the 26th day of December. And I remember many, many things about that, but I can go on and keep talking about this, but I understand there might be some questions here that you might have, or queries, curiosity. Don't be afraid to ask your questions. It's not much I don't know. In fact, I like to tell everybody I'm a walking gazette. It's not much that I don't know. And so sometimes I want people to ask me a lot of questions so I can get some all this information out of my head. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Gowan. We already have some questions, but the first question I have for you, I want to ask, which is, what is your fondest memory of Boxing Day? Did you ever get a special gift, a treat that you remember?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, some memories you have, they don't stick with you. They don't stay in your mind long at all. But some memories stay with you forever. And this one occasion on Boxing Day is when I was enslaved there on the Mrs. Vobe at the King's Arms Tavern. And I had thought for that year that I had suggested openly many times, even left notes around the taverns as to what I might would like to have for my gift in my Christmas box for that year. And I had thought maybe I had been as clear without giving it or making it obvious that I was trying to get her to get me a particular gift. I was just trying to kind of hint around of how I would like the Christmas gift given to me, and as close as I could, exactly what I wanted. Well, of course, I had great anticipation on that very day after Christmas Day on the 25th, on the 26th. I almost couldn't sleep that whole night because I was just waiting to see that present that I had thought she understood I wanted. And I, that day, of course, received my box, and I opened my box, and instead of what I had suggested that I wanted, which was, of course, would be the King James Bible. This is my pocket Bible here with the King James 1611. I did not receive that. What I received when I opened that box was this document, this book. This is called the Book of Common Prayer. Now, what you might not understand, as a Baptist preacher, the Book of Common Prayer is not necessarily the type of gift I would want. And instead of showing my disappointment, I think what I did for the next following, months before the next Christmas, I think I was a bit more clear to Mrs. Vogue what I wanted. And of course, on that day, when I opened the box, there it was, my King James Bible. These are very, very rare in the colonies and now states, very expensive. One of these leather back type of books, but I had an occasion, of course, to get that. So that is my fondest memory.
Wonderful. Well, we have some questions here already. Tina actually had two questions. First was, were the gifts in actual boxes? Is that where the name came from? And did people of dissenting faiths observe Boxing Day? You said it was came over here with England. Was it just an Anglican thing?
Oh, no. It was not just Anglican or just Catholic or just any particular denomination. In fact, I think mostly all celebrated, except for the Jewish, as far as I know, denomination Christmas, but mostly all the other dissenting denominations celebrated Christmas and Boxing Day. There were many others. If the individual owners of the enslaved people and some of those indentured servants that were part of these congregations, if the owners did not give them a box, and it is an actual box, by the way, Tina, it's an actual box, and sometimes it's wrapped with a little bow on it, very nice, or a ribbon of some sort on it. So definitely it was. But if they weren't getting boxes from their owners, then the church congregation, the congregation of that particular denomination, would make sure that those enslaved people and indentured servants and some of the other peoples that helped them throughout the year will get a box also.
Wonderful. Well, Robert has a few questions, but the first one I think is a really good one about why it was the Baptist faith in particular appealed to you and the other enslaved people around Williamsburg. He asked, does it have to do with the notion of divine inspiration in preaching?
Oh, Robert, let me tell you, you're pretty close. You're very, very close in understanding why Baptists were sort of the major choices for most enslaved people. The Baptist denomination, it was inspiration from the way they preached the Word of God. Baptists, as you probably well know, preachers do not preach like other preachers. They're a little bit, I would say, enthusiastic. I mean, they get excited, and they want you as a congregation to get excited with them. And that was very much an attraction to the enslaved people, having that enthusiasm especially to be a part of their lives. But truly, the real reason that many of the enslaved people would take up being Baptist more than any other denomination was the very fact that Baptist preachers, white Baptist preachers, were persecuted more so, and sometimes right in front of them, before that 1776 war that would lead to the win for now the United States of America. Before that, Baptists suffered a lot of persecution. Baptist preachers, a lot of arrests. They were arrested for preaching without the proper license and disturbing the king's peace, and put in jailhouses throughout Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and some of the other colonies. Baptists were not allowed to be a denomination that could be deemed like or equated to the Church of England.
And is that why you personally chose to become a Baptist minister as opposed to, say, a Methodist or a Presbyterian minister?
Well, that's a great question, Robert, too. I would probably would have chosen to be a Methodist, or might have been chosen to be a Presbyterian, because they were actually Presbyterians were here in Virginia before the Baptists came in 1750. The Presbyterians had started entering Virginia about 1742. Of course, Methodists will be a little bit later, but I had heard of John Wesley and Charles Wesley and Francis Asbury and Thomas Coate, and their teaching. Most Methodists were abolitionists, and so I would love to probably have been a Methodist, but what would have kept me from being a Presbyterian and a Methodist is I could not itinerate. As an enslaved person, I could not itinerate several different churches, like on a Sunday. They call them circuit riders on horseback, going to 3 or 4 churches at a time and 3 or 4 sermons, that especially on Sundays, even during the week, but especially on Sundays. I could not do that as an enslaved person. I could not travel like that. But as a Baptist, it really worked out for me because I didn't have to travel. Each Baptist church is its own governance. In other words, you do not have a presbyter or a council of bishops to assign you a church. each church itself would choose their own pastor.
Thank you. Aaron has a wonderful, simple question about what is your favorite part of Christmas?
Aaron, I'm sure you're going to probably figure this one out. I love the dinner. Christmas dinner. That is my favorite. I don't know what it is. I work at a tavern, and I used to be part of a tavern for most of my life. And there was always food of all sorts, different menus. I mean, throughout the whole year, people could choose the things that they liked. But what I really like is dinner on Christmas Day. Everything seemed to taste a lot better on Christmas Day. So that would be my favorite thing for Christmas.
Thank you very much. We have the questions actually. You made some reference to this. You worked a great many Christmases when you were enslaved. You had no choice. Carissa wants to know, did slave owners allow time off for the holidays?
Oh, excellent. Chris, yes, listen, very good question. And that's very important that you would even ask the question about time off, because the 26th day of December, Boxing Day, begins that time that you can take off and go find your family if they are living in other places, especially within that particular colony. You will get a special pass from your owner to travel to those particular places, and you might be able to stay 2 or 3 days at that particular place before returning back to your home. And so that was another very exciting time for enslaved people. Still, as I said, over half of my congregation are enslaved people. And they still find that time to be very precious, because to tell you the truth, what really is the heart of an enslaved person is their family. And I mean, there's some have gotten married, jumped the broom, or have gotten married, and some have wives and husbands and children and other relatives about. And that is a very exciting time of the year when you can go and spend time, and especially stay a few days with your loved ones.
Wonderful. But working at a tavern, I have to imagine you had some very hard-working Christmastide seasons.
Well, Christmastide itself, I mean, that starts like almost the beginning of Advent. That's about 4 weeks, the first 4 weeks before Christmas. Great anticipation, of course, of the Christ child that will be born on Christmas Day, which is the 25th of December. About 4 weeks before that is what they call Advent. Well, for the enslaved people, that is the busiest time for any enslaved. I mean, it is work almost 24 hours a day, and for that almost that whole time. I mean, yes, so you're going to be able to get rest, and you're going to be able to try to refresh yourself and rejuvenate yourself somehow during that time. But most of it is work, because there's a lot of people coming together and having gatherings all the time. People are traveling about from different other places, other colonies, now states, and coming into your particular colony or state, and you're having all kinds of celebrations. But for the workforce, and that's what the enslaved people are, they are busy all the time, and some of them don't get the proper sleep. And of course, when you don't get the proper sleep or proper rest, you can make mistakes, and that can lead to all kinds of trouble for you. So it's not the best time of year for those that are enslaved people.
You mentioned something a bit ago that I wanted to return to before we got too far away. You mentioned that if a person was Jewish, they might not celebrate Boxing Day. Are there many Jewish people, Hebrews, I think, as you referred to?
Hebrews, yes.
In Virginia, in Williamsburg?
Oh, excellent question. Yeah, we do have some. Dr. D. Sikora and his family are Jewish. He's a Jewish doctor, by the way. He's working out of the public hospital that we have here in Williamsburg. But yet, even as a Jewish family, he doesn't have a temple or a synagogue to worship in. Temples and synagogues were limited here in the colonies, especially when we were colonies. They were limited to just certain places in the colony. Savannah, Georgia, which is so mysterious to me as to why Savannah and Georgia allow a synagogue there in Savannah. Not a usual thing that where there's churches of England, there normally are not a lot of other denominations. But I do know there is probably one of the oldest synagogues in North America in Savannah. Of course, in Pennsylvania and Rhode Island, you would have many synagogues because Pennsylvania and Rhode Island are the only two colonies that you could be of any denomination that you wanted to be. If your family were born in Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, you choose as a family what your denomination will be. And you can practice being a Methodist, Baptist, Quaker, Dunker, Lutheran, Amish, Mennonite, Catholics even. Catholic churches of Rome there are in Pennsylvania and Rhode Island. So those were the best two colonies if you wanted to actually have a chance to choose your denomination.
Tina asks a wonderful question. Did enslaved people incorporate any African traditions into their Christmas celebrations?
Oh, Tina, you really must have done a lot of work in getting to understand what you just said. Because that's not known to a whole lot of people, even some of the masters or some of the owners of the enslaved people, because it wasn't an encouragement for them to practice African traditional religious practices. And so sometimes they had to practice it in sort of a hidden way where it's not seen directly as being a way of worshiping. I'm thinking about the three African religions that you would see a lot of, we'll see aspects of that religious practice throughout all 13 colonies, and that was voodoo. Some call it voodoo, but voodoo, which actually is not a religion that is actually a scary religion. Voodoo is actually a practice of a type of religion where you have a cleansing of the evilness that might have been part of your life. You're constantly cleansing that out of you. You had Santeria. Santeria was a practice mainly now in Brazil and South America. That was also in North America being practiced, and in some way they blend even some of their Christian practices of religion with some of the African practice of religion. And Shango. Shango is the third one of the African tradition of religion. You have gods of some of those traditional religions like Ogun, the god of iron. A lot of blacksmiths knows about the Ogun god of iron. Some of them know the very knowledge and history of having Ogun to be watching over you as you turning that iron piece into a beautiful object. But yeah, so you don't practice the religion openly. You somehow learn to blend it in with your everyday life.
A moment ago you were talking about the different denominations, and now you're talking about the different way people blend practices and celebrations. And I wanted to ask, do all denominations celebrate Christmas the same way? For example, as a Baptist, is there something you do different than, say, the American Episcopal Church, since we now are free and are no longer under the Church of England, versus, say, a Presbyterian or a Methodist.
Well, Christmas itself is or practicing uh, the religious doctrines. There are always going to be a little difference. Sometimes it's not something pretty overt. Sometimes it's lighting candles. Presbyterians don't believe in having a lot of instruments in their worship practices. Some of them believe in singing, but not necessarily with some kind of instruments. Now, Baptists, and in my particular church here in Williamsburg, if you would ever come on a Sunday to one of my services, you will find all kinds of instruments. You're going to find reed instruments. You're going to find even little djembe drums. You're going to find gourd instruments, shaker-rays. You're going to find a lot of different instruments being played within the congregation. And of course, the singing is one of the things that people seem to really be attracted with my congregation, because some say that sometimes they can hear our voices are far off, and they think it sounds like an angelic choir. So I would say that there are some differences in the practicing of the different religious traditional practices, especially at Christmastide.
Carissa asked this a moment ago. I think it was when we were talking about dinner. She asked, what type of dinner would the enslaved people get, and were there people who would donate dinners like today?
Oh, great question. Well, the dinner can be varied. Most of the time, if they're doing a weekday, especially slaves, because see, there's really three kinds of different slaveries. Slavery is not the same everywhere. Slavery in the city is going to be mainly, we call like Williamsburg and Philadelphia and Boston and New York and Savannah. These are city slaves. And city slaves operate and work differently than plantation slaves. Plantation slaves are working down, mainly working out in the fields from sun up to sundown. And they, of course, singing out there while they're working. But you also have another set of slaves that most people do not know about, and those are slaves that are upon the high seas. You have slaves that are on merchant ships, in fisheries, in different other the seas and oceans are busied with a lot of ships and a lot of enslaved people. There are just as many slaves upon the high seas as on plantations. And so their life will be a little bit different also. And so the work and everything and practices would always be different depending on where you are.
All right. Well, we only have time for one or two more questions. But before we end, Amber has a question about, is your church open to the public? You haven't talked much about your church. Is it still a congregation that gathers outside, or well, tell us a little bit about your church.
Amber, my church is now one of the largest churches in the United States of America. When we started out, we were just a handful of people. 1776, maybe about a week after signing the Declaration of Independence, that's when we started my church. And as I said, it was just a handful of people. But by 1781, the Battle of Yorktown, I would have 200 members. And those 200 members on the plantation called Green Springs, I had to move them quickly out of Green Springs because of the Battle of Green Springs between the Patriots and the British soldiers fighting on the plantation of Green Springs. I had to move the 200 members to a place, as I had said before, called Raccoon's Chase, right at the mouth of College Creek on the road to Jamestown. And of course, it was there in Raccoon's Chase where we grew, really quickly by 1793. And by the way, 1793 is a banner year for me, and I always like to mark that year. That was the year of my freedom. I got my free paper. And I would have a congregation of over 500 members. in 1793. But I have again been very fortunate now to have a family called the Cole family donate a lot to a property right in the middle of Williamsburg. As a matter of fact, I've just given permission for my at least 35 carpenters that I have in my congregation to start building a wooden church right on Nassau Street, right between the Duke of Gloucester and Francis, right across from the public hospital. But everybody can come to my church. And on a Sunday, if you are a Baptist, you're going to be coming to my church because I'm the only Baptist church in Williamsburg.
Well, thank you so much, Gowan. We've really enjoyed our time here, but for the last question, I think let us look to you and your church. What is your hope for the future of your church, of your role as a minister and in your life and even beyond?
That's a very moving question. And I mean to say that with the fact I've been with this church for a long time, and even before 1776, I started preaching, and in fact became the first, as I know, one of the first ordained black preachers in America. There weren't any ordained when I was ordained in 1772. I became the first one to be ordained here, and never thought I would be having a church of some size as I have now, and about to move in our first building here in Williamsburg. It's all miraculous. But I do believe that this church is built so solid, and I mean, by the grace of God, we are in my congregation. I have every trade. Every person in my congregation have skills that they can survive for generations. They teach it, as I tell them, teach your children's 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 children your trade so they can always have a means of taking care of themselves. So I really do believe the future for my congregation, even when, the Lord takes me into home to the heavens. I do believe that the church will continue on because it has been built upon solid ground, not upon sand, but solid rock. And I believe that because we did it the right way, and I believe the blessings of God and of course with the prayers of the saints, I do believe that my church will continue as far as you could think into the future. That's what I believe. That's what I hope for.
Thank you so much for being here with us today, Preacher Gowan.
Well, I thank you, and I thank many of those of you that did ask the question, and want you to know, don't stop. There's means of getting a hold of us here, and you find those means, and you keep asking those questions. I'd like to also thank those that have donated to this cause here at Williamsburg, and if it wasn't for their support, we wouldn't be able to do programs such as this. So we want to thank them also for all that they continue to do every single day so we can continue to tell the story.